Hello everybody and welcome to our autism friendly training for libraries. I'm Sarah and my co-host here is Logan. We both work for Dimensions and we've been working on autism friendly environments since way back when they started about 10 years ago. So today's course is going to go through understanding autism, communication, adjustments you can make at your library, and promoting your autism-friendly library. We anticipate it will be up to 2 hours long, and we aim to get a break in the middle as well. Please do put anything in the chat that you would like to tell us, and sorry, and you've just messaged, so can Jane say a few words if that's possible? Let me see if I can make her a panelist and then she'll be able to pop on and say a few words. Has Jane joined? Because I can't see her. There we go. Promote a panelist. Sorry about this, guys. Hi, Jane. Do you want to pop on and say a few words before we get started? Are you there, Jane?
I'm here, yeah. Good morning,
Hello.
everybody. Hi, Sarah. You okay?
Yes, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I just wanted to say a few words before we start. Firstly, to thank everybody for joining today. 70 plus delegates is fantastic. So thanks, everyone, for taking the time out to join this session. So as you know, you're probably aware that this training is part of the Reading Pictures, Seeing Stories festival that's happening shortly across the Yorkshire and Humber region. Thanks to Arts Council for funding that. And just to say that it's a good opportunity to get people back into our libraries. You know, we've been hanging on and waiting too long to restart properly. And this is a great way. There's some fantastic events going on. So let's promote the heck out of it. And enjoy the festival when it comes. That's all I've got to say, Sarah. Thank you. I'll hand back to you now.
No problem at all. If there's anything you do want to pop in and say during the presentation, you're absolutely more than welcome to, Jane.
By the way, just to say that I'm the chair of Ascombe Regional.
Nice to meet you.
That's why.
It's fine. It's a free-for-all.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So as mentioned, we're going to be recording this presentation, or we are recording this presentation, so you can look back on it and we'll also share it as well. So don't worry, you don't have to be taking notes and remembering everything that we go through. It's going to be quite jam-packed. Please do use the chat box. Myself and Logan are going to be presenting throughout, but we will get to it. And if you've got any questions you'd like to pop in there, please do, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. We'll try and get a break in, but we'll just have to see how long our slides take, timings and things. And if you do need to drop out at any point, please do. But like I say, we'll be sharing the slides with you anyway. So welcome. In 2016, we officially partnered with the Association of Senior Children's and Education Librarians and Libraries Connected to help libraries all across the country be more accessible for their autistic guests. We had funding from Arts Council England and we developed this training and also a full-length training video which is available on our website. We also ran nationwide research and we'll be sharing data and quotes throughout that in the presentation, and the top right in that purple box. So as you can see here, we found that autistic people are actually more likely to visit the library and twice as often as other people are. I'm just going to show a very quick video, an introduction to autism-friendly libraries for you. Hopefully the sound will work. We did give it a bit of a test beforehand, but you never know with these sorts of things.
Imagine if something as simple as going to the library had the potential to cause you stress, anxiety, embarrassment, even a panic attack. There are around 700,000 people in the UK living with autism today. That's more than 1 in 100. More than 90% of those people would visit the library more often if some changes were made.
So moving on to the first section of our presentation, and that's understanding autism. Autism is different for everybody, so we can only give a bit of an insight, and your best knowledge will come from your customers. So speaking to people in the local community and just getting to know them. The famous phrase is, once you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So as mentioned in that short video, it's estimated that 1 in 100 people across the country have autism, and that it touches the lives of 2.7 million people per day. Now, autism is lifelong, and it affects how people sense the world, and too many sensory inputs can be overwhelming. It can also affect how some people communicate, and because it's a spectrum condition, everybody experiences it different, and no two people are the same. It means that some autistic people can have difficulty with social communication, so making their thoughts understood, social interaction, knowing social rules and picking up on the minute cues that neurotypical people perhaps take for granted. Social imagination, now that is predicting what other people are thinking, finding the insinuations behind words that are said, sarcasm, for example, and processing sensory input. So that means that things like lights, sounds, smells, textures, tastes can all be overwhelming. Now, it's very different for everybody. So, for example, somebody might be sensitive to loud noises, whereas some others might be sensitive to silence. It does appear to affect more men than women. But research shows that women tend to mask it more and sometimes aren't diagnosed until adulthood. Now, masking is something that many autistic people do, and note the quotation marks here, to fit in with other people in society. So they push down their natural instincts on how to act and how to behave and mimic what other people are doing, so it's more socially acceptable. So what is sensory overload? Autistic people can find it difficult to suppress background input, and being able to focus on making decisions or listening to your instructions at the same time as all the other sensory inputs that are happening can be quite difficult. So the example here that our autism consultants gave us was, imagine trying to do long division in your head at a music concert. Too much input can cause sensory overload. So routine, reduced sensory input, and clear instructions and choices can really help your autistic customers. As you can see there in the top right is one of our strongest statistics, in that 90% of autistic people would visit the library if autism-friendly changes were made. Sensory overload can cause something called a meltdown. A meltdown is where the person reacts in an erratic way. They may thrash around on the floor, crying or shouting. Some people might see this as being a tantrum. It isn't a tantrum, it's very different. It isn't a person behaving badly or causing a fuss for no reason. It's their way of communicating and grounding themselves that there's been too much sensory input. So if you do see somebody having a meltdown, just clear the area of potential hazards and try to make the environment less stimulating. So if you can, turn the lights down, reduce noises, move people away who are perhaps staring because they don't want to feel judged. If there's anybody with them, talk to them and ask them if you can do anything else to help, and just wait for them to calm down and then ask if you can do anything else to help. They might want to go to a quiet room, for example, just to ground themselves and settle back down. Sensory overload can also cause something called a shutdown in some autistic people. And this is where the person closes their senses and themselves off. They might not move, speak, or respond when they're engaged with. So if you see someone who is shut down, just give them space and quiet and make sure someone is around to help them when it finishes. Again, move any people out of the way who might be causing them additional stress. So now I'm going to introduce my colleague, Logan. Logan is our autism consultant, and he's been working with Dimensions for at least 5 years now. Logan is autistic himself, and he has siblings and his mother is autistic as well. So he's got lots of personal experience in this, as well as professional experience, because he helps us develop all of our autism friendly training. So I'm going to pass over to him now, and he'll go through some tips on communicating with autistic people.
Thank you, Sarah. So of course I can give my insight into my personal experiences with these environments, but obviously as said before, my experience may not represent everyone's experience, but I can sort of give a general insight into how the majority of people might feel with these sorts of environments, and sort of how to communicate and understand how to help people who might be dealing with stuff like this. So I have sensory processing disorder. For me, I am hypersensitive, which means essentially all of my senses are turned up to max. So, you know, things are too loud. I don't like being touched. Some people may be the complete opposite and be hyposensitive, which means essentially they could break their toe and not notice for a week. So it's kind of the opposite, where all their senses are reduced and they might like pressure. You know, they might like being touched. I also have selective mutism, which is essentially if I find things are too distressing or I'm not feeling so well, sometimes I will just not talk. And essentially that is closing a tab out of the millions of tabs that are open already. So with over processing and sensory processing, I find I've got so many tabs open in my browser that it makes things look like things are running slower, but really things are just already overpacked. And sometimes if things get too much, I have to close a few tabs. For example, I might need to close a tab on my verbal communication, or I might need to close a tab on eye contact. My two siblings are also autistic. They experience this differently. And what we mean by that is, as mentioned earlier, everyone who is autistic is their own individual person outside of that, of course. So doctors have sort of dropped the phrase high functioning and low functioning because it's not really someone has less autism or more autism. It's the same diagnosis, but people experience it differently and therefore they express it differently. So I've put together a few things as to how to help autistic people in your local library. So yes, going back to eye contact, it's simply just another tab that is open among the millions of tabs that are already open. I've often said to people, you can either have my attention or my eye contact. You can't have both. If I'm making eye contact, I am focusing on something else and I'm either not listening to you or I'm not gonna process what I'm gonna say back to you because I'm focusing too much on eye contact. So you'll often find when autistic people are talking to you, their eyes are often all over the place. They're not ignoring you. And if anything, they're actually trying to focus more on what you're saying by avoiding eye contact. And of course, silence is not because of a lack of understanding. Some people just need extra time to process either what they want to say or they need to process what you have already said. Usually the recommended time is about 6 seconds thinking time, but of course, if someone needs longer, then they might need longer. If you keep repeating what you've already said, because you might think maybe they haven't heard you, that's going to make things worse. That's just going to keep opening tabs in their browser. So just say what you want to say once and just give them the time to respond. So some autistic people can find it difficult to talk, while others can talk quite a lot about topics or areas they have interest in or know a lot about. A lot of people are both, just depending on how they feel on the day. Oftentimes it's the more you start talking with them, the more comfortable they are around you, and they'll start going on a massive tangent about something about their personal interest. you know, that's always a good sign, because it kind of shows that they've sort of adjusted to the environment, so they're comfortable enough to sort of open up about these topics, because not everyone likes sharing what they're interested in just generally. But some people, they also might find it difficult to talk, which is sort of going back to the selective mutism. You know, it's another thing to process. Some people may use text to speech to talk. Some people may communicate by writing down what they want to say. And some people speak with Makaton Sign Language, but more on that on another slide. Oh, sorry, my voice is going. So autistic people can find it hard to block out background noise, lights, colours, to focus on the conversation, to allow 6 seconds thinking time. So yeah, going back to what I said before, sometimes what is already going on in the environment, no matter how tame it may be, no matter how adaptable we may make it, it is still sometimes a lot to take in. So especially if they've never been there before, they just sort of have to get used to their environment and understand sort of where they are and how things work. So essentially it is still opening a lot of tabs on their browser. Help them to choose. So lots of options can be overwhelming. So instead of saying, what book would you like, say, shall I show you where the non-fiction books are? I've found with a lot of people on the spectrum, you find that making broad decisions is really stressful, because while you may think, what sort of book would you like? They might say, oh, I like horror, or I like fantasy. But a lot of people, when you say, what sort of book would you like, they're going to instantly think of every single book in existence and trying to make a decision from there, which just sort of adds to the stress. So like sort of try to reduce the options, like, shall I show you where the non-fiction books are? No, I prefer fiction. Okay, would you like to see the fantasy ones? And just sort of maybe work from there. But again, just keep it simple and try not to give too much information. So don't make promises you can't keep. For example, saying when a book might be available if it is returned late. So, you know, stuff's always going to happen. Someone might return that book late when you said, oh, it should be in by this date, and it's not in by that date. Many people who are autistic need a sort of consistent plan. And if they have planned to go outside and to the library on the day that you said the book will be back, and some unexpected thing has happened and the book is not back, that could potentially cause a shutdown or a meltdown, or just mess with their plans in general. So, you know, just sort of don't make definitive statements. You know, it might be back on this date, but we can't be 100% sure. Some autistic people can be hurtful or rude and say things when they're stressed, but don't take it personally. They may have trouble communicating their distress. So of course, this doesn't necessarily mean let people be rude to you. You can say like, oh, could you not, I prefer if you didn't speak to me that way. But essentially what we're saying here is don't immediately assume if they start lashing out that it's of ill intent. Most of the time it isn't of ill intent, it's just they're stressed and they don't know how to communicate their stress outwardly. So they're all feeling it on the inside and they don't know how to process how they're feeling. So just be very understanding and, you know, don't be judgmental. Just sort of give them all the time they need. And if they want to be left alone, then just leave them alone. They might need some time to process. So there are some tips and trainings on how to use signs and imagery. This can be very helpful for a number of reasons, mainly because a lot of autistic people struggle to ask people for help. You know, going into a shop and not knowing where to find butter or something. A lot of people, well, especially people with anxiety in general, just won't go up to someone who works there and ask where to find butter. But if there is a massive sign, as most shops have, that says where butter is, they can just go there and have the independence to go there on their own without having to ask for help. But you know, obviously not everyone can read properly, or some people might not be able to process properly. So having really clear signage, oftentimes with little symbols of what the sign is pointing to helps. Makaton can also help. Makaton is essentially just simplified sign language. And of course, that can be sort of intimidating to learn at first, but you know, we're not asking you to be fluent in it, of course. It's just any words you feel like might be relevant, because Makaton helps for a number of reasons. It takes the eye contact away because you're looking at your hands instead of your eyes, and also it takes away verbal communication on their side sometimes. It's always good to say what you're saying while Makaton signing. So people might want to lip read, or they still might want to hear what you're saying. So if you just learn the basic one, like toilet or specific genres of books, that makes conversations a lot more easier. And it also makes them feel a bit more welcome because it's like, oh, they took the time to learn that, and you know, they sort of feel more comfortable in that environment. So yeah, I went on a bit of a tangent there. You don't have to be fluent, but learning the basic signs definitely helps. So avoid jargon, slang, and metaphors. So essentially avoiding saying stuff like it's raining cats and dogs. Some people will take that literally. So essentially, you know, try avoiding giving hints. Just say exactly what you mean, but not in a way that's patronizing, you know, like don't talk to them like a baby or anything, but just sort of avoid overcomplicating your language more than it needs to be complicated. So yeah, again, with the signage, it does give people more room for independence because they don't need to ask for help. And personal space, yeah, this sort of goes for a lot of people, but being touched can cause anxieties. Being spoken to can cause anxiety for a lot of situations. But some people can find it hard to understand personal space, and they might want to hug you or take your hand. And if you don't want to do this, then just tell them what to do instead. Like, oh, could you not hold my hand? I'd rather you didn't do that. If you know, if they have like sometimes they have sensory toys or something, like little things they can play with, you could maybe suggest, oh, could you use that instead?
Thanks, Logan. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to put into the chat box now, just based on what Logan said? I can see that we've had one asking about customers and library users using Makaton. Now, we don't have any formal statistics on that, but we can certainly include it in our next batch research, because that would be really interesting to know. Logan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Makaton is largely now being taught at schools, particularly special schools, and people who are receiving paid for support tend to be learning Makaton. Is that right? Do you know?
I wouldn't know for sure.
Yeah.
I hope that's the case though. If that is, then that's great.
It can sometimes be a bit of a curse when we're so involved in the sector, because Makaton is massive in dimensions, but we know that's not always the case nationally. So moving on, we're going to be building on what Logan's told us about communication and interacting with autistic people. And this is about building up your sensory friendly environment. So libraries can be considered quite old-fashioned and strict, quiet places. People have visions of their old school library with the librarian shushing at them if they happen to turn a page too loudly. It can deter some autistic people from going because they're afraid of disturbing the peace, not following the protocol and the rules that are in place. I say the rules with the quotation marks there. And some autistic people do make noise themselves, and that's called self-stimulatory behaviour or stimming. So when it gets a bit overwhelming, they might make some noises, or even if they're reading a book that they're particularly interested in and excited about, they might make some noises. Certainly at our autism-friendly cinema screenings is very vibrant, and there's lots of sounds going on, and people will laugh very vocally rather than the very British quiet shuttle under your breath that is so kind of well known. Some autistic people need a quiet environment, and they would certainly benefit from being in a quiet environment, whereas others actually need some ambient noise around them and need some background noise. Logan has spoken previously that he likes to have some background noise, whereas other autistic people we've spoken to in a recent event said that they need quiet. So just bear that in mind and make it clear that there are no hard and fast rules, and that the library is an adaptable place, and it's not like those old-fashioned views that some people might have. So as mentioned, it should be clear to other customers that your library is autism friendly. So not just your autistic customers, to let them know that they are welcome, but other guests and customers to know that some of their fellow guests might be making noises and might be stimming and that there is an acceptance of those behaviours. Staff's teams should see this as an opportunity to raise public understanding about autism. So if you do have an autistic guest, make sure that there's lots of signs up to the public saying, if you've got any questions about our autism friendly library, please speak to a member of staff. That will not only make the autistic guest feel welcome, but will also deter that member of the public from perhaps saying something that could potentially be hurtful just through their own ignorance. And encourage them to explain to other customers what being autism friendly means, and by hosting special events. So when your staff teams are having conversations with their customers, regular or otherwise, just mention that you're a sensory friendly library and explain the adjustments that you've got in place and what that means. So reducing sensory stimulation can make a lot of difference from autistic guests. Libraries can be bright, loud and exciting places with children and groups enjoying the public space. Quite often there are strip lights and there might be corners where there's more noise than in other quiet areas. For many people, the main cause of sensory overload is noise, movement, lights and colours. And social interaction can really increase stress as well. So if it's possible to turn down the lights, do so, or have an area where the lighting isn't turned on and it is lit by kind of casting from other parts of the library. If there are groups and loud people expected into the library, make that clear, put up on your website and signs in the library, or maybe a printed guide that people can take a look at, just saying, these are our busiest times. This tends to be when we have school trips in. We're hosting an event at this time. So if you'd like to come when it's quiet, come at these times, or if you'd like to be part of that atmosphere, come at this time. As it says in the top right corner there, everybody experiences autism differently. So you might find that someone is hypersensitive to sound, whereas someone might be hypersensitive to silence. Someone might have selective mutism, whereas someone else might be particularly talkative. You have to just roll with it, be adaptable and listen to your guests most importantly. If you make it very clear that they can talk to you and that you are welcoming them and you would like to learn from them, chances are they will tell you what they can most benefit from. You know your library best, so think about how you can create a sensory friendly and consistent atmosphere. It includes increasing the lighting to a neutral level if possible, reducing noises, and even minimizing strong smells. That tends to be more applicable to the venues that are perhaps in old buildings where certain areas can smell quite musty or damp. But also making sure that you don't go a bit over the top with the air freshener. Where you can't make changes to the environment, just provide as much guidance and as many signs as possible. This will help customers prepare. Autistic people are used to having to adapt to environments and to prepare. And if you provide as much information to them before and during their visit as possible, they'll feel more comfortable, and they'll also feel more comfortable asking for reasonable adjustments too. If you can allow areas of the library to have ambient noise and make it clear to other customers that it's autism friendly. As mentioned before, that includes tolerance of certain levels of noise and acceptance of different behaviours. I'm going to suggest that we take a bit of a break now, just a quick 5-minute break. There's been quite a lot of information for you to take in. We've learned more about autism, how some people experience autism, and how you can start thinking about changing your library to be a more sensory friendly environment. I can see that there's lots of chat going on in the box, so please do pop some questions in there if you'd like us to address them throughout the presentation, and share your comments. And let's come back in about 5 minutes and we'll continue on with the presentation. Thank you, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hopefully you are all back by now. 5 minutes can go quite quickly. So now we're going to move on how to tell everybody that you are an autism-friendly library. So one of the most important things autistic people and their carers want is just understanding and acceptance. They want to know that they're in a safe and inclusive place where people won't judge them. So make it clear to all customers that you're autism friendly, display signs and posters, and templates are available off the Ask Girl website and the Dimensions website, and also use the Dimensions autism friendly logo, which we can provide once we've vetted you. Share the adjustments that you have made and the resources and support that you have available, and encourage customers to talk to members of staff to find out more. This is your opportunity to share your knowledge and understanding of autism and providing security and reassurance to your customers that they are welcome, they are in a safe place, and that they can be themselves. You'll see in the top right there that our previous research has shown 80% of people with autism have felt excluded from their community, and they don't feel like they can participate in events. It's also worth noting that while there might be many clubs for autistic children, these tend to fizzle out as they get older, and autistic adults do feel excluded. Also, that many adults who are autistic at the moment might not have a diagnosis. They might suspect that they're on the spectrum, but because autism was massively underdiagnosed, they just haven't been able to get the diagnosis that they need. Provide signs, instructions, and equipment. So many autistic people do hate uncertainty. They need to have confidence before entering and on entering an environment about where to go and what to do. You can help them and the person who's supporting them by providing as much guidance as possible. I think we can all agree that during the COVID times, the strict signs that have been in place and even the foot markers of which directions to walk and where to stand have all been really beneficial. We know back when the pandemic was at its height that you would have to stand outside a shop and they would let certain people in. There were parts of the store that were closed off and there was big signs saying as much. So some tips and suggestions. Think about how your signs, guidance and maps can all link together. So consider colour coding areas of the library and genres of books. Use the colour codes across the maps and on the signs that you have in your library. Keep imagery and language consistent, so don't change the way that you've described something in one resource to another, and avoid adjectives and keep language clear and concise. Use clear images that relate to the message that you're trying to convey. So you can use images for book genres, accessible toilet imagery on your map, and avoid bright colours that might be a bit too might stimulate your customers a bit too much. It's great to have high contrast, but avoid the garish colours. So like the dark blue with the white text and the purple with the white text here is very clear and easy to read. Whereas if that was on like a bright red background or something, that would just be too much to process. And remember that your audience will include autistic adults too. So don't just aim to appeal at children. It can be quite tempting to put lots of clip art on there and use lots of imagery. But that just excludes a large portion of the population who are autistic and adult. Here's some ideas for signs and guidance. It looks like a lot, but once you've put that into the context of your library and things, it actually kind of isn't too many. Signs, guidance, posters, leaflets, and social stories people can use to navigate the library is really helpful. A social story is a document that explains what's going to happen and what the individual is going to be doing in a very clear way with images. So for example, it will say, at 12 o'clock, I am going to set off to go to the library, and there will be a picture of a clock at 12 o'clock. We can say, I will be going on the bus to the library with a picture of a bus. And when I arrive at the library, I will walk up the stairs to reception with a picture of the stairs. Now you can create a social story specifically for your library. So you can create a social story of, I want to hire a book To do this, I can go to the machine with instructions of how to use the machine, or I can go to reception and talk to somebody and do it to somebody in person with instructions of how to do that, and also some questions that they might like to ask as well to get more information. Directional signs can be really helpful. So a map of the library, the reception, the reading areas, computer areas, where they can go to ask somebody a question, where to hire books out, book genres and types, and toilets. Also to include there a lift for your disabled customers. Information signs. So opening and closing times, dates and times of any events that you've got planned, when the library is expected to be busy and when the library is expected to be quiet, how to identify a member of staff, such as a sign with a photo of the lanyard that the member of staff wears and ask me a question text on it. Or if you do have a consistent staff team, you could even have pictures of the staff available with their names underneath and what they do. Make sure you include not every disability is visible on the disabled toilets too. Warning signs are equally as important. So when a noisy event is taking place or is due to take place, put signs up there just to warn people. For hand dryers in the toilet, put a sign up, or even say the hand dryer is turned off, please use the paper towels available if you know that you're going to have an autistic guest or event with autistic guests in. Where there's a bright moving computer screensaver. So if you have a computer area with lots of screens and they've all got a screensaver of the library logo, for example, bouncing across the screens, perhaps just put a warning there for people so that they can prepare, because that can be quite off-putting. And they might ask you to turn them off, which is a more than reasonable adjustment. And warning signs of where there are areas where sensory stimulation can't be significantly reduced. So there might be areas where you have to keep the lights on bright, areas where there's quite often children running around and making noise, things like that. Guidance, which can be included printed out in the library as signs, as a resource book, but also on the library website, is how you can actually get a library card. Sometimes it can be a bit uncertain of how to get one and what's expected. So for example, will people need to have their photo taken? Will they need to bring a photo? Do they need to bring any identification? Things like that. How to use the self-service machine. If somebody hasn't been to a library since they were young, things will have changed a lot. So old libraries where you talk to the librarian about everything, that's where you get your card, that's where you hire books out, that's where you return books. Whereas now there's quite often self-service machines, book drops and things like that. How to check a book out in person. So somebody might be intimidated about using the machine and want to talk to somebody but not quite know where to start. So those initial questions and statement prompts are really helpful as well. How to hire a computer. They might not be aware that the computers are actually available for hire and think that they are just for the library staff, for example. So make sure there's very clear guidance in the computer area and in the main area about how they can do that, and anything else that you've got available to hire, such as CDs and DVDs and things. Also make sure you outline library fines, how they work and what to do if you get one. Sometimes an autistic person might have a book out, be planning to return it on a day, but something happens and they just can't. They can't leave the house, or they get partway to the library, they get overstimulated, they need to go home. So make it clear what to do if they can't return the book on time and how they can avoid a fine. Have some lenience there, and don't just fine people automatically if the book is a little bit late. Put all of that information and guidance and maps available on your library website if you've got one. And as mentioned, the social story guide with pictures about their visits on your website too. A template's available on the Askell & Dimensions website, as are some templates for some signage too. Also try and make sure, if you can, to print all of your guidance into a pack, which means that they can pick it up, take it to a quiet area of the library and read it in their own time, rather than having to walk around the library and finding the signs. So going a step further, there's always something more that you can do. And we haven't included everything in this. It would be impossible to. You might find things out from your guests of how you can take that step further and support them even more. Provide disability positive books. So there are some books that could help your customers learn more about autism, disability and differences. There are many available and some research can give you lots of options, but they don't always have to be very blatant disability positive books. They might be a book with an autistic protagonist, for example, or written by an autistic person. The spotlight doesn't always need to be on the disability to make the difference. Being able to have characters within there and storylines that they can relate to is just as beneficial as having a, what's the word, role model, for example. We at Dimensions do have some links to some disability positive books that we can put you in touch with. So we have an author who writes books about Jess the Goth Fairy. She is autistic herself and her books are very positive and disability positive. We also have an illustrator called William Hawkes who works with an author called Jude Lennon to write books about Hal, who is an autistic protagonist. And those books go into, those comic strips really, go into some details about how he prepares to do something. So I believe his latest book is preparing for a birthday party, because birthday parties can be quite stressful and overstimulating. Provide specific times for extra adjustments. So some people might only feel comfortable in the library when they know that it's an autism friendly hour, for example, and that customers are completely aware and comfortable that this is an autism friendly specific time. It gives you the opportunity to implement more autism-friendly adjustments, such as reducing the lighting even further, having extra staff on hand to provide support, and putting out extra guidance, and also providing some sensory equipment, such as sensory toys, bean bags, projectors with relaxing scenes, things like that. And it also gives you an opportunity to better understand your autistic customers and what interests they might have. So if you host specific autism friendly events or autism friendly hours, your autistic customers will come along, you can have a word with them, you can find out what they're interested in and start to tailor your environment and your events around what they would like. Create a private space. So if you do have the space available, make it clear to customers that there is somewhere private, quiet and calm that they can use if they do start to experience sensory overload. Some time to relax might be the difference between having a meltdown and a shutdown and having to leave, or being able to continue their time at the library. This quiet area doesn't need to be a full-on sensory experience. It can be a room with a comfortable chair in and some soft lighting. Natural lighting if possible, just where they can take some time and they know that they won't be disturbed. Create a sensory space if you can. So if you do have a private area away from the hustle and bustle, you can create a sensory space. Put some board games and educational books and resources, and put out some fidget toys, including kind of like fidget spinners and things like that for self-stimulatory behaviour, which is also called stimming. A quick Google search can come up with all sorts of these, but you can get fidget spinners, which I actually have one here. And I'm sure you've all seen various versions. Mine's a snitch, which is amazing. They spin around like that. You could also get like foam balls and things, bean bags, blocks that they could use, just things that they can touch. If you can get a projector with calming scenes like the Northern Lights or a galaxy, that's really positive. Fairy lights, floor mats, cushions, bean bags, pop-up tents can all create a comfortable environment with different areas where they can get comfortable, relax, and experience lots of different senses. This can include touch, so you can have different textures, different types of touch, soft things that they can squeeze, things they can bounce. As we said, light, so the projectors and the fairy lights and things, but even sounds, there might be some things in there where you can get different sounds like springs and things. Make sure that this space isn't a play area for children though. The confusion and the noise could cause stress for autistic customers. or they might not feel comfortable going in, particularly if they are older. So I can see that some questions have come in, so I'm just going to take a bit of a break from presenting now because I need to stop staring at my screen and go through some of the questions that have come in. Now, bear with me, I haven't actually read these yet, so I'm just going to go through. How can adults get the diagnosis? So adults can get a diagnosis through the NHS if they go to their GP, but the frustrating thing is they need to say that their autism is affecting their everyday life in a negative way. So it's hampering their productivity, for example. And waiting lists can be a long time. They can be 6 odd months or so just to even start the assessment. There are various places where people can get it done privately. Now that isn't expensive. I researched one and it was costing about £1,700, but they are much quicker and they could potentially get a diagnosis within a matter of months. It depends on their financial and personal situation. Just to make it clear that people don't need a diagnosis to come to autism friendly spaces, because like we say, many people won't have a diagnosis. I'm sure Michelle won't mind me saying this. So Logan's mum, Michelle, works for Dimensions. She didn't get a diagnosis until her 3 children had got their diagnosis, and she was going through the process with them and realised that actually there's a reason she gets on so well and relates to this so much. So she went and got her diagnosis from there as an adult. So a risk assessment for each library to ensure we're truly autism friendly. Do you know any authority who may have done this or something similar? Not specifically. I must say you're the first region as on bulk to take the training. Dimensions can assess the changes and things that you've got in place. You're more than welcome to do a risk assessment yourself internally. We don't have any formal risk assessments in place, and we wouldn't feel comfortable doing that purely because we provide the adjustments and training and advice, but there isn't a higher authority health and safety wise to be able to provide the accreditations. But we can take video walkthroughs from your library, or if it's in visiting distance of Dimensions colleagues, we can visit your library and run an audit and give you the accreditation. If you've got any questions or any concerns you want to raise with us directly, we're available on hand to help you. We do also have people called quality checkers who are employed by Dimensions, who you can hire on a freelance basis to come and run an audit and provide advice as well. Now, they're all people who have got autism or learning disabilities themselves. I believe their rate is £10 an hour, as well as travel expenses. So a dementia checklist, yeah, that's really fab. So an autism friendly checklist would be great. That's something that I would love to put together, and I do intend to put together soon. There is a light one on our website. So if you go on to the Autism Friendly Libraries section and click on We Are a Library, and then if you click on Apply to be included in our directories, there's a checklist there, and you can submit the form, and that tells us what you've been doing. But I will put that into a document that you can use online as well, so you can download a PDF and do a tick box there. That's a fantastic idea, thank you. The Hidden Disabilities Lanyard Scheme, fantastic. So some autistic people do use the Sunflower Lanyard to show that they have a hidden disability. Unfortunately, the pandemic has caused some people to abuse that, and not everybody will take it seriously. Not everybody wants to make it clear that they have a hidden disability. They don't want to have it plastered all over. Some autistic people feel comfortable using it, some others don't. Some might just come and not mention anything about their autism and just want to get on with their day, whereas others might want to come and have a chat with you about it and tell you about their experiences and give you some ideas of what else you can do. So be accepting to the Hidden Disabilities Lanyard or any other indication of a hidden disability. They might have a card that they've downloaded off the internet themselves. They might have a I don't use spoken words to communicate card, and they might have another option for communication that they use. Just be adaptable and open to everybody. Fidget jewelry looks amazing. Yes, I want to get a ring actually. But yes, there's fidget jewelry that you might see on a customer. It might not even be specifically fidget jewelry. They might just have a necklace on that you see them playing with quite a lot of self-stimulatory behavior, or a bracelet on that they might be playing with. Some might play with their hair. Skin picking is another self-stimulatory behavior that they might see, so they might be picking somewhere on their body. It's not always evident, and certainly don't go up to somebody and ask about it, but being aware of those cues, for example, can just help you evaluate and make sure that all your signage is clear and all your guidance is clear. Thank you for that, Sonia. I've not heard of Chewy Gem, but I'm certainly going to take a look. Please do keep posting comments and questions in the chat box, and I'll do my best to be able to answer them. And if you've got any questions as well, you can just pop an email through to me as well, and we can arrange a chat or something. I'm actually based in Sheffield, so I'm in a great location to be able to come and visit some of the libraries, and I do intend to force myself on Sheffield libraries very soon. So hosting autism specific events. These can be a great opportunity to get to know your autistic customers and autistic people in the local community. And you might want to host events that they would specifically enjoy. Now, it can be a bit of a stereotype, so please don't assume that all autistic people are interested in engineering or great at art and things like that. That's quite a harmful stereotype. But you might find that some of your autistic customers do have a particular hobby or fascination and special interest. So are some of your customers fascinated with the workings of the railway system? You can ask an expert in to host a talk about it. Is there a book that's proving particularly popular? Ask someone to do a live reading of it, or even invite the author to speak. You might find that many of your autistic guests like Minecraft, and there are many Minecraft books and things out there as well. So host events based on what you see your autistic customers enjoying. Don't make any assumptions, but talk to them. You'll get to know them like you do any of your other customers. Speak to local groups as well. There might be film clubs who have a mix of autistic and non-autistic members, and they might like to, if it's a film that's based on a book, they might like to do some readings of the book or some analysis of the book and things like that. Sometimes there's an even bigger crossover in that, like Tomb Raider, it's a film based on a game which has books based on the game, so you can kind of all pull that into one and create a really fantastic event about it. If it's an autism specific event, it's a great way of introducing it because the autistic guests know that it's for them. They are welcome. All the adjustments will be in place. They won't be judged, and they'll also get to meet some of their peers. But we don't want to say just do autism specific events. Do events and make it very clear that autistic guests are welcome and that there will be a mix. The more inclusion that you can create, the better. Quite often uncertainty around interacting with autistic people is just through ignorance. It's not malicious, it's uncertainty, uncertain of saying the wrong thing, uncertain of not knowing what to do. When really you just need to get to know people individually. Everyone can be a little bit shy when being thrown into an environment that they aren't quite sure of. So inclusion across the community is a really great opportunity. So when hosting events, whether this is autism specific or one that has autism friendly adjustments and everybody is welcome, don't overfill it. So make sure that there are free spaces for customers to sit, move around, change seats, and try and mitigate feeling cramped in like they can't escape. It's very tempting to kind of say this is a sellout event and not have any empty seats there. But that can make some people feel trapped and unsure and overwhelmed. Ask customers what adjustments would help them in advance. So if it's a ticket system, ask as part of the ticket registering process to let them know about any reasonable adjustments they would like you to consider. And let them know what you'll do to try and accommodate them. Not all of them will be possible. For example, someone might request all of the lights are turned down kind of not always possible because you need to think of your other guests as well, but you can compromise and you can say, we will turn half of the lights off and make sure there's space available for you to sit in a particularly darker area and that there's a breakout room available for you to go to should you need to. Create a social story or even a video to walk them through what to do and what to expect. So this should include a schedule for the event too. So what time the event will start, when there will be breaks, where they can go to the toilet. Are they allowed to eat and drink during the event? Are they allowed to take food in, have drinks of water or pop or anything? Will there be assigned seats? All of these questions can be really stressful for somebody, and if they know what to expect beforehand, the whole event will be much more enjoyable and they'll be able to relax. Put signs and posters up so it's clear where they are, where they should go and what they're there for. I certainly know that I've been to events before that have been held in venues that are doing other things as well. So you will still be a functioning library when there's events going on. And you can turn up to these venues and there's no clear indication that you're in the right place. You don't know where to go. You don't know where to find the specific event that you're looking for. So make sure that there's signs, a nice big sign in the entrance saying XXX event here today, starting at such and such time. Follow the signs. It's in this room. If it isn't an autism specific event, allow customers who are autistic to come earlier than other customers so that they can get to know the environment, get settled, find their seats, and just calm down a little bit. Turning up into an event where there's lots of people already sat down and staring at you as you walk in is very intimidating. Invite people directly. So talk to local groups, schools, clubs, colleges, support organisations, charities, all these sorts of things, and give them a specific invite to an event. It can make them feel really special and make them feel appreciated as they could be considered VIPs. You don't always just have to promote an event saying it's going on, register your place here. Just do it as an invite. And make sure you have everything set up and ready to go before customers arrive. There's always last minute problems and things that need to be tackled. That's completely understandable, but try to have all of the seats and the signage and things laid out before people arrive. If there are changes to the schedule and things are running late, just be clear, have a host available to explain what's going to happen, why things are running late, and provide all that information. Make sure the person introducing the event explains clearly what is going to happen, what adjustments are in place, where the toilets are, and who to go to with any queries. When an event is taking place, sometimes it could be quite hush-hush and you just sit in your seat and you're afraid of making any movement or any noise that might draw attention to yourself. Try and avoid things like that. Make sure it's clear that people can get up, walk around, go to the toilet whenever they need to, and that they won't be disturbing everybody. That's just how the event is being run. It's always better to take payments in advance and have a sensitive refund policy in place. So some people might not be able to attend. They might be having a bad day. They might have a meltdown before they set off. The bus might be late and then that might cause to be too much stress and they have to scrap the plans and go home and decompress. Or people might have to leave early. They might realise and get overstimulated and have to leave the event before it's due to finish. If that's the case, don't just take their money and run. Make sure that you are able to give them a refund and make sure that they know that that's okay and they aren't a burden, they aren't causing a fuss and they haven't broken any rules. Put up clear signs saying where they can't take food and drink, and images as well as words here will help. Make a quiet space available for customers who want to leave and calm down, and put up signs to show where it is and have someone available to let others know if it is occupied. So somebody who is very overstimulated and stressed won't know to turn around the sign on the front to say this is occupied. They'll just want to go in and calm down. So if you've got somebody available there to help in a non-judgmental, non-intrusive way, that's really beneficial. And it also means that customers will be less likely to have to leave early as well, because they can take the time that they need to calm down and go back to the event and enjoy it. The events can be open for anybody to come to, with a focus on them being autism friendly. The general public and neurotypical people going to a autism friendly and sensory friendly event can learn a lot. They can learn about the adjustments in place, why they're in place, and reduce some of the stigma that's out there. And always make it clear that the environment is autism friendly, and if anybody has any questions, they can speak to a member of staff. I keep reiterating this. Even at our autism friendly cinema screenings, there are people who book them by mistake and wonder why people are making noise and moving around and the lights are on, and they make complaints. Being able to have a member of staff available just to diffuse some of those potentially awkward and stressful situations is really beneficial. I have seen a couple more comments coming in. A website for private assessments. That's not something that we have available, unfortunately, and it does vary on each region, local authority. But a quick Google search of the area that you've got and autism assessments will bring up local organisations, charities, etc. that can do that. Some might specialise in diagnosing children, whereas some might specialise in diagnosing adults, some might specialise in diagnosing women, and some might do all of it. So a bit of research can pull that up for you. So you've got 6 sets of sensory equipment for use in libraries, including pop-up tents. That's fantastic. Intending to loan these out across our 40+ libraries. That's amazing. Is that okay as long as we make it clear the equipment will not be in the library at all times, or it will cause anxiety if equipment is only there for a short period of time and then removed? If you can create a rota in advance so you know where the equipment's going, what months during the year and when they'll be available, and let the local libraries post saying that they will have sensory friendly equipment available these months of the year, that would be absolute best. It also means that the libraries can host events around when that equipment is going to be available, or have displays around autistic authors, for example. Not make a big deal of having the equipment and not shout about how isn't this amazing, we're fantastic, but using it as an opportunity to be able to welcome autistic guests who would most benefit from the sensory equipment, or perhaps a bit more nervous about going in if they don't have that special equipment available. Obviously make sure the equipment is all clean and everything, particularly in COVID times, we're all used to disinfecting absolutely everything. But if you can have a schedule for when that's available and provide as much information and say it will be taken away on this date at this time, then that's absolutely fantastic. And certainly equipment some of the time is better than no equipment at all. So we have about 50 minutes left. That's fantastic. We've got some good time to go. I'll suggest, I think, that we have another 5-minute break. And in that time, if you can, have a think about your library and what adjustments you can put in place. Any ideas that you might have had, put them in the chat box. Some things that might feel obvious to you aren't obvious to other people. And it's quite difficult on my end to do a very generalized set of advice for people, because every venue is different. All of your guests are different. So please do share that in the chat and let me know if you've got any questions. And we'll meet again in 5 minutes to finish the presentation. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I think it's been about 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by my cat who's just kittening and doing his thing. So we've got about 45 minutes left here and about 6 slides. So chances are we will finish before time. You can either have some of your time back, or if you would like to have a chat, we can give you permissions to speak, and we can have a bit of a chat once I finish the presentation. Donna, yes, the slides will be shared and a recording of this meeting will be shared as well. Magnetic and laminated boards and images for customers create their own social story would be fantastic. That's a really good idea. Not everybody's got a printer themselves, so being able to provide any templates and things, or printed paper that they can take out and draw all over and things, would be absolutely brilliant. So promoting your autism friendly work. Promoting your autism friendly library and events is key to growing your audience base. They need to trust your space and feel confident that your staff team understands autism. It's very important to know that if autistic people have had a bad experience, that can severely impact how they feel about going back to that venue or to that event again later on. So if something doesn't go to plan, reassure them that that's okay, that you will try and make sure it doesn't happen again and put in any adjustments to help rectify that. Something that you can do is offer tours for the library before or after opening hours when it's quiet, so they can have a look around and they've not got the fear of being judged or standing out in any way. But promoting it and getting it out there and making sure people are aware of everything that you're doing. Don't be humble, brag about all the adjustments that you're putting in place and that you're always learning and developing. It will reassure them and it will reassure you that you're doing everything right too. So it can be tempting to do all promotion online, but libraries are traditionally very community-based spaces. Provide printed materials and talk to customers locally too. Word of mouth is massive in promoting anything autism positive, I must say. The autistic community are quite tight knit and they talk to each other, and there are lots of forums out there. So if you're doing something great, they will talk about it on your behalf. But of course, you do have to get that message out there first. Remember to keep autism friendly at the forefront of your messaging and design. So keep the language simple and inclusive. Say what you mean, and the design clean with a good contrast, as we've already talked about. This is an opportunity to engage with potential customers and showcase your autism awareness and understanding. So try and use inclusive language as much as possible and avoid language that could be considered discriminatory or offensive. So for example, we've used throughout this training people with autism. When we originally developed this training, that was the used phrase, whereas now it's veered a lot more onto autistic people and neurodiverse people. So we will be updating our training to reflect that because times do change. So where you can use autistic and neurodiverse, please do. Avoid the puzzle piece that can be quite exclusive. Exclusive? That's the opposite of inclusive. That can feel like it excludes people. The autistic puzzle piece is quite a controversial logo. It's seen a lot, particularly in America, but it implies that autistic people have a bit missing or they need to fit in or something like that. So try and avoid using that. If you do want to use autism, you can use Dimensions Autism Friendly logo. Just make sure that you come to us first before using it, just so we can make sure that you're doing everything on board, and we'd be more than happy to put our name behind you. As Logan mentioned, don't use metaphors, so keep language plain and simple, very direct. Avoid adjectives. I know it can be tempting in the world of such a creative space that is libraries and books and things to use lots of adjectives, but plain and simple, straight to the point is what people will remember and understand best. And where possible, work with your autistic customers to promote. So if they've got experiences that they would like to share, give the voice to them, put the spotlight on them. I always try and make sure that in any training that we do, I include Logan or another autism consultant because they are the experts and they've got an insight that neurotypical people just don't have. Promoting it nationally. So you can email Dimensions and let us know that you're an autism friendly library. We'd absolutely love to hear more and discuss opportunities for us to share your work, not only across our digital channels to our tens of thousands of followers, but also in PR. We are a national not-for-profit support provider. That is our primary base. So rather selfishly, we like to get local PR, particularly in areas where we work, but elsewhere across the country, to show that we are helping communities, we are doing wider work to support people, and that ultimately helps us get local authority funding to provide support services for people who need it in those areas. So where there is opportunity for local PR to talk about your libraries, what you're doing, we can absolutely support with that, and we'd be absolutely thrilled to support with that. We like to act as what we call background lighting to things that you are doing. So we don't want to take over your achievements, but you'll get the recognition of a national accreditation, and we'll also be able to give you a platform that you might not necessarily have. Now, I mentioned don't do it all online, but social media is a very strong platform, and a lot of, like I said, autistic groups, there are Facebook groups and all sorts dedicated to talking about all things autism. And of course, as you know, there are local groups talking about events and things that are going on in the local community. So use social media. If you have a library Facebook page, a Twitter account, Instagram, for example, use that. Or if you don't and you feel comfortable posting from behalf of the library from your personal account, check that you can do that, and make sure that you are understanding that you're representing your library. Share your work and events that you're holding and provide customer services for any customers who do have questions. So it might be that you say you're holding an autism friendly hour or an autism friendly event, or even that you've implemented some changes and you are an autism friendly library all of the time. People still will feel a bit unsure about visiting, so make sure you're available on hand to answer questions over chat, email, phone, as many options as possible to help reduce the pressure of having to speak to somebody, because some people will prefer to type, whereas other people won't be able to type and will need to use the phone, for example. And they'll just ask some questions and you can provide reassurance there and make sure that they know that they are being listened to and understood. Promoting your autism library locally is fantastic, and reaching out to local support services, groups, schools, and publishing on local directories can have a massive impact. Make sure you have a positive and proactive relationship with those local groups, schools, charities, etc. Building those trusted networks does take time, but it can mean that you've got a regular customer base and a changing one as well. As those charities, groups, schools, etc. work with new people, they will introduce them to your library and know that you are a trusted and safe place to go. Host joint events. So invite them to take a tour of the library and get their feedback and advice on any additional adjustments you could be doing. If there's a local group, for example, work with your local museum and have a bit of an exhibition on at the library, or your local art gallery. Any local experts, host joint events with them so you can promote each other's work and work together and just bring in that community spirit that can help everybody. But your offline work should support your online work. So if you've posted on a local group social media account, call them and explain what's going to happen, more about the event, for example, and share flyers that they can distribute. It's surprising how many people still like to have something physical that they can hold in their hand, stick on their fridge, give out to friends, for example. Contact your local authority to access information on local services and organisations, and search for your local offer. It's a provision by each local authority that gives children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities and their parents or carers information about what activities and support is available in the area. Now, your local offer is online and it's great to be able to post on there, but your local authority will also provide information for people who have received a diagnosis or are looking for support services. They tend to give them a pack that's got leaflets and things in it, so make sure you get some of those printed out and shared as well. So we've come to the end now. I'm just going to go through a little bit more about dimensions and a little bit of a plug for who we are. So as mentioned, this guide was written in 2016, which I've turned into this presentation today, with help from autism consultants, experts, ASCL and Libraries Connected. We do provide autism-friendly resources for a number of venues, including cinemas and museums. So if you do have a local museum that you work with or you know, direct them to Dimensions website and they can get training on becoming an autism-friendly museum too. Dimensions itself is a national not-for-profit support provider for people with learning disabilities and or autism. So that means our resources and any surplus does go back into providing high quality support services. So autism friendly and campaigning is just a little bit of what we do. Our primary objective is to provide great support for people in their local communities and promoting their independence. And we've reached the end of our presentation with a good half an hour to spare. I can see a couple of comments have come in, so I've taken a look at that. And if you would like to post any more comments or questions in the chat box, please do. Or if you would like to have a chat with us, just pop it in the chat box and I can give you permissions to speak. So you asked us to share how we are working with people with autism. In many North Yorkshire libraries, we work with young autistic adults to give them volunteering opportunities. That's brilliant. Some come along with support workers, and then once confident, they can work without them. That's absolutely brilliant. I encourage all libraries and organisations to provide volunteer and work opportunities for autistic and learning disabled people in their community. Art workshop for families with children with autism, or art workshops for families with autistic children. So art workshops are a great idea actually, but not just for autistic children. Art workshops for adults who have got autism and are interested in that. Some, like Logan here, might be illustrators and might be interested in anime, manga, comic strips, etc. Some might be more interested in life drawing. Or modern art and things like that. So art workshops are a great opportunity, and particularly if you can connect with local artists to do that. Don't just make it an autism specific event, make it an inclusive one, and it would be really interesting to see different interpretations of art through neurotypical and neurodiverse customers. Like to deliver training to all? Yeah, absolutely. If you would like to send me an email or pop a, send me an email to the marketing@dimensions email address, Julie, and we could talk about that for sure. Right, everybody.
Well, if I can butt in then,
Of
Sarah
course,
and
please
Logan.
do.
Hi, it's Jane again. You can see that was absolutely spot on. Just what we wanted. I've learned an awful lot myself. I'm sure everybody else has. And I think from this training, you're going to get an awful lot of communication from us. And we'll be in touch from Sheffield as well, as you know. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you, everybody.
That's fantastic.
I'll stay floating around in the background for at least the next 5 minutes, just if anybody would like to pop some questions over. But you're more than welcome to leave and get half an hour of your time back. So thank you, everybody, and thank you for being so active in the chat box too. It's always great to see you when I'm talking to no faces on the end of a Zoom call.